Chapter 1. Today's mission. Instead of making random clips or testing prompts, today I want to see if I can direct a complete cinematic sequence from start to finish using Higgsfield. Right now I'm on the Higgsfield homepage, and one thing I always appreciate is that everything is in one place. You have access to multiple frontier models without having to jump between different platforms. That's really convenient when you're experimenting, because every model has its own strengths. For today's project though, I'm mainly going to be working with Nano Banana 2 Lite for creating my character and Gemini Omni Flash for bringing that character to life. Those are the two models I'll be relying on throughout this entire workflow. So let's jump straight into Nano Banana, because every good movie starts with one thing, a main character. Chapter 2. Casting the lead actor. Before we generate anything, I already have a pretty clear picture of the kind of hero I want. I'm not looking for something overly futuristic or exaggerated. I want someone who actually looks believable. The kind of character that could easily fit into a modern action movie. So I'm going to start by creating my base character first. I'll describe exactly how I want him to look, his face, clothing, overall vibe, and the atmosphere around him. Think of this as building the foundation before we start experimenting with different styles. Alright, and here's our base character. This is exactly why I like starting this way. Instead of generating completely different people every single time, I already have someone to work with. Now I can make smaller changes and see what actually improves the design. So now comes the fun part. I'm going to generate a few different variations of this same character. Some with different facial expressions, some with different outfits, some with a more emotional look, others with stronger cinematic lighting, maybe a different hairstyle here and there. The goal isn't to completely change who he is. It's just to explore different versions of the same person until one of them really stands out. Alright, the first variation is ready. Let's open it up. I actually like this one. The face feels a little softer than the original, and the expression makes him look a bit more approachable. It definitely has potential, but I'm not completely sold yet. Let's move on to the next one. This version gives him a much stronger expression. He looks more focused, more determined, almost like he's already been through something before the story even starts. I like that. Now let's check the next variation. Okay, this one's interesting. The lighting is much more dramatic, and it instantly feels more cinematic. It's the kind of image that could easily work as a movie poster. I really like what it's doing with the mood. Let's keep going. Now we've got another version with a different style altogether. It's still the same character, but the overall vibe changes quite a bit. That's exactly why I prefer generating variations instead of settling for the very first result. Alright, now that everything's finished generating, let's actually compare them properly. Instead of looking at them one by one, I like opening each image and paying attention to the little details. Which face feels the strongest? Which expression tells the best story? Which version immediately makes you think, yeah, that's the hero? Sometimes the smallest change completely changes how a character feels on screen. Looking at all of them together, I think one clearly stands above the rest. This military version, everything just comes together here. The outfit fits perfectly. The expression feels confident without looking overdone. The lighting gives it that cinematic look I was hoping for. And honestly, this is exactly the kind of character I can imagine carrying an entire action movie. So this is going to be our lead actor. I'll go ahead and download this, because from this point on, everything we create is going to revolve around him. Let's keep going. Chapter 3. The movie begins. Now that we have our hero, it's finally time to bring him to life. I'm going to upload the image into Gemini Omni Flash and generate our very first scene. The prompt itself is pretty straightforward. I want our character standing in an abandoned city with that cinematic action movie atmosphere. Nothing too crazy just yet. I want a solid opening shot that establishes the world before everything starts falling apart. Alright, now while that's generating, I actually want to try something. Before we continue with the rest of the movie, I want to do a quick comparison. I'm going to use the exact same image, the exact same prompt, and generate it with both Gemini Omni Flash and Seedance. Same character, same instructions. Everything stays identical. I just want to see how both models handle the same scene before we move any further. Gemini Omni Flash has already finished generating, so let's have a look. Honestly, that looks really good. The movement feels smooth. The camera has a nice cinematic feel to it, and our character still looks like the person we created back in Nano Banana. That's something I always pay attention to because character consistency becomes really important once you start building multiple scenes. Now let's check Seedance. And unfortunately, there it is again. The generation failed. What's funny is this isn't actually the first time it's happened to me. A few days ago I was testing Seedance on another project, and I kept running into the same issue over and over again. After a while, I switched over to Gemini Omni Flash simply because it was much more reliable during my workflow. Seeing it happen again pretty much confirms why I made that decision. So rather than sitting here waiting or trying the same generation over and over, I'm just going to keep moving with Gemini Omni Flash, because this is where the real fun begins. We've got our hero. We've got our opening scene. Now it's time to start directing the movie. Chapter 4. Directing the movie. Alright, now it's time to get into the real movie. Before I start throwing prompts at this project, I want to show you a workflow that I've personally started using a lot, because it's given me much better results. Instead of generating every single scene from scratch, I like creating one strong base video first. Think of it as filming your opening shot before you start directing the rest of the movie. For me, this makes the whole process feel much more organized. It also gives me a reference that I can build on instead of starting from zero every single time. So I'm going to upload our hero once again, paste in my base prompt, and let Gemini Omni Flash generate that foundation for us. The prompt isn't anything too complicated. I just want a clean cinematic shot that captures the atmosphere I'm going for. Once I have that, everything else becomes much easier. Alright, and our base video is ready. Let's play it. I already like how this looks. It's simple, but that's exactly what I wanted. The camera movement feels natural, the character looks great, and it gives me something solid to work from. So now I'm going to download this video, because we're going to use it as the starting point for everything that comes next. Once it's downloaded, I'll upload it back into Gemini Omni Flash, and this is where the real directing begins. Instead of creating random disconnected clips, we're going to keep building on this one foundation. Alright, the first prompt is in. Let's generate it. While that's processing, this is usually the part where I'm already thinking about what comes next. I don't really plan every single shot beforehand. I normally have a rough idea of where I want the story to go. Then I let each generation inspire the next one. Okay, first video's ready. Let's see what we got. Nice. That already feels like a proper movie shot. The movement is clean, and more importantly, it still feels connected to the base video we just created. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Now let's keep building. I'll paste in another prompt and generate again. One thing I've noticed is that making smaller changes usually gives me much better results than trying to describe an entire action sequence in one prompt. It's almost like giving directions to a real film crew. You make one adjustment, see how it looks, then build from there. Alright, next generation is finished. Let's watch it. I like this one even more. The scene feels like a natural continuation instead of looking like a completely different video. That's what I'm aiming for throughout this entire project. Every scene should feel connected, not like a collection of random AI clips. So let's keep going. New prompt, generate, wait, watch. Repeat. And honestly, this part is probably my favorite. There's something really satisfying about seeing the movie slowly come together one scene at a time. Instead of rushing through 10 different ideas, we're gradually shaping one story. Another generation finished. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's working really well. At this point, it doesn't even feel like I'm generating separate videos anymore. It actually feels like I'm directing the next shot in the same film. And that's exactly the experience I was hoping for. So now that we have a few connected scenes, I think it's time to make things much bigger. Chapter 5. Raising the stakes. The first comparison we did earlier was interesting. But I don't think one comparison is enough. So from this point onward, I'm going to run almost every important scene through both Gemini Omni Flash and Seedance. Same prompt, same character, same idea, then we'll compare them side by side. I'm not changing anything else because I want this to be as fair as possible. Let's start with the first scene. Both generations are running now. Gemini Omni Flash finished first, so let's check that one.
Watch the rooftops on the right.
The movement feels smooth, the pacing looks good, and the character still matches the one we created right at the beginning. Now let's look at the Seedance version. Looking at both of them together, I personally prefer the Gemini result. The motion feels cleaner, and everything flows a little more naturally. Of course, everyone will have their own preference, but for the kind of cinematic style I'm trying to create, Gemini Omni Flash is giving me the look I'm after. Alright, rather than waiting after every single generation, I'm going to queue up the rest of my prompts so they can all start generating together. That way, while the others are processing, we can already begin comparing the ones that are finished. The second video's ready. Let's watch both.
Ambush! Ambush! Take cover!
Again, I find myself leaning towards Gemini. The movement feels a little stronger, and the overall scene just feels more polished to me. Alright, third generation. Let's see. This one is actually a really good comparison, because both videos are trying to do exactly the same thing. Watching them side by side, I still think Gemini holds up really well. The camera movement feels more cinematic, and I like how the character behaves throughout the scene. Moving on, fourth generation.
Run! Don't look back!
Keep moving!
At this point, we've looked at quite a few examples, and I'm noticing a pretty consistent pattern. Every time I compare the results, Gemini Omni Flash ends up producing the version that feels closer to the movie I'm trying to make. That's ultimately what matters to me. Not which model generates first, not which one has the longest list of features, just which one gives me footage that I actually want to use. And so far, Gemini has been doing exactly that. Now that we've got all these different scenes ready, let's push things even further. Chapter 6. Keeping the hero consistent. Up until now, we've mainly been focused on building the movie. Now I want to see how well our main character holds up when we start changing everything around him. I'm keeping the exact same hero. I'm not changing the person. The only thing I'm changing is the environment. So I've got a series of prompts ready, and honestly this part is pretty straightforward. I'm just going to paste each one in, generate the video, wait for it to finish, and then we'll watch all of them together once they're done. So let's start generating. Alright, everything's finished now. Let's go through them one by one. Here's the first one. Straight away I can tell it's still the same character. The face is recognizable. The clothing still matches. The overall look hasn't suddenly changed. That's a good sign. Let's move on to the next. Different environment, same hero. Again, that's exactly what I wanted. One more. Still looking good. This is one of those details that's easy to overlook, but it makes a huge difference when you're trying to tell a story. If your main character looks completely different every time you generate a new scene, it immediately breaks the illusion. Here though, everything still feels connected. The character still feels like the same person we've been following since the very beginning. And that's exactly what I was hoping to see. So now we've tested consistency. We've built multiple connected scenes. We've compared different models. I think there's only one thing left to do. Let's really start pushing the limits. Chapter 7. Pushing it even further. Alright, we've spent quite a bit of time building our character and making sure the story feels connected. Now I just want to have some fun. This chapter is honestly less about telling a story, and more about seeing how far we can push Gemini Omni Flash with different kinds of action scenes. Unlike the previous chapter, I'm not continuing the same sequence here. These are simply text-to-video prompts, and I want to see how each one turns out. So I'm just going to paste in the prompts one by one, hit generate, and once everything's finished, we'll sit back and watch the results. Let's get started. Alright, everything's finished generating. Let's play the first one. Immediately, the atmosphere stands out. There's a lot happening on screen, but it still feels easy to follow. The movement doesn't feel overwhelming, and the overall shot still has that cinematic look I've been chasing throughout this video. Let's move on to the next. This one feels completely different, but in a good way. I always like replaying certain moments because sometimes you notice little details the second time around that you completely missed the first time. Let's watch that section again. Yeah, that actually looks really good. Alright, on to the next one. Something I keep paying attention to is how the movement feels. Is it believable? Does the camera movement make sense? Does everything feel like it's happening naturally? Those little details make a huge difference. Next clip. I really like how this one turned out. The scene has a lot of energy without feeling chaotic, and that's surprisingly difficult to achieve when you're generating action-heavy footage. Let's keep going. Every new generation feels like another piece of inspiration. Even if I don't end up using every single clip, it's always interesting to see how the model interprets different prompts. Some of them end up looking completely different from what I imagined, and sometimes those unexpected results end up being even better. All right, we've gone through all the generations now, and I think we've gathered more than enough footage to build something exciting. So let's jump into the final step, then ending with the biggest moments. Once that's done, I'll add some cinematic music to help tie everything together. A few sound effects here and there, some basic color adjustments, a title card, a few finishing touches, and honestly, that's pretty much it. Sometimes the simplest edits end up working the best, because they allow the visuals to speak for themselves, instead of distracting you with unnecessary effects. Alright, everything's in place. The trailer is finished. Let's watch it. Chapter 9, the premiere, trailer plays. And there we have it. From one single character to an entire cinematic trailer. And what I like most about this workflow is how straightforward it actually is. We started by creating one character in Nano Banana 2 Lite. Instead of settling for the first result, we explored a few different variations until we found one that really felt like the lead actor for our movie. From there, we brought that character into Gemini Omni Flash and started building the story one scene at a time. Rather than generating random clips and hoping they'd fit together later, we focused on creating a strong foundation first and building on top of it. For me, that made the entire process feel much more consistent. Along the way, we also compared Gemini Omni Flash with Seedance using the exact same prompts. And at least from my own experience during this project, I found myself coming back to Gemini almost every single time. The motion felt smoother, the scenes felt more cinematic, and most importantly, it consistently generated footage that matched the style I was trying to achieve. Of course, everyone's workflow is different, and you'll probably find your own way of using these models. This is simply the process that's been working really well for me recently. I genuinely enjoyed seeing this movie come together step by step, instead of trying to generate everything at once. It almost feels less like prompting AI, and more like directing scenes one after another. That's honestly one of my favorite parts about working this way. If you've made it this far, I'd love to know what you think. Which scene was your favorite? Was it the opening shot, the action sequences, or maybe the final trailer itself? Let me know down in the comments, because I'm genuinely curious. And if there are any other workflows, challenges, or ideas you'd like me to try with Higgsfield, I'd be happy to put them to the test in another video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.